Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadasya yata nivyadi taratas charti svavigya swarat tene brahma hridaya adikavaya muyanti yat surya tejavari madam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo misha damna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dimahi. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious. You have to close the door. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him. It is he who first imparted the knowledge unto the heart of Lord Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of material nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, first verse. Whatever we're going to hear about the four nutshell verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam are coming from this verse, 111 of Srimad Bhagavatam. And there's going to be a little bit of more information in the four nutshell verses, but basically everything is in this first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And what are we saying? We're saying Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now let us hear about the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. He's the son of Vasudeva, and he's called Vasudeva, long A. So this subject is not easily understood by most people. In fact, almost everybody does not understand this subject. This is called the science of Krishna. You cannot understand this subject while we are still under the influence of passion and ignorance, or rajas and tamas. One must be situated very securely in sattva guna to begin to understand this subject, just to begin to understand it. So, therefore, it's not surprising that very few people, even initiated devotees, don't understand this subject. What is the subject? The science of Krishna. It has nothing to do with belief. It has nothing to do with religion. This is a science. It means, and you have to understand what the word science actually means. The definition in the Webster's Dictionary, or the Britannica Dictionary, is not correct when it comes to the definition of science. Those definitions are misleading. The real definition of science is, it is fact. That means that in the past, in the present, and in the future, and in every realm of existence, it could be on this planet, it can be on the demigods' planets, it can be on the hellish planets, it can be in the spiritual world. It is fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the absolute truth. That is science. It's not that it's a relative subject. It's only true in the material world. This science, the word science, the real meaning of it is fact that's true in all realms of existence and in all time, past, present, and future, and in the material world as well as in the spiritual world. That is the definition of science. You have to understand that definition. It is not a relative thing. The definition, you can look it up right now. The definition of science in the dictionary. What does it say? Look it up. Many of the definitions of English words in the dictionary are incomplete or misleading or absolutely wrong. Go ahead.
Systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained.
Okay. What's the second definition?
Knowledge of any kind.
Does it say belief anywhere? Belief that? Is that the Merriam-Webster dictionary? Which dictionary is that?
No, I'm not looking. I think I'm looking Oxford. Let me look at Oxford.
No, don't look at that. Look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary.
Webster.
Even what you just read is not correct because it's only dealing with the physical world, or they call it natural physical world.
Knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through scientific methods.
Is that Merriam-Webster?
Yeah, that's what I think.
It doesn't say belief in?
Belief. I don't see.
What?
Yeah, it's from that same Merriam-Webster.
Yeah, Merriam-Webster.
It doesn't say belief in.
No.
Does it say belief in anywhere?
No, I don't see that.
The definition is knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through scientific method. That's the one definition.
Go ahead. Second definition.
Such knowledge or such a system of knowledge concerned with the physical world and its phenomena.
Anything else? Third
And
definition.
then the second one is essentially say department of systematized knowledge as an object of study. The other one is something that may be studied or learned, like the systematized knowledge. Third definition is a system or method reconciling practical ends with the scientific laws.
Okay, look up religion. See the definition of religion. So, in the definition of science, according to the dictionary, it's only concerned with the physical world. They call it physical world or natural world. It doesn't go beyond that. Go ahead.
A personal sect or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs and practices.
Beliefs and practice,
Belief, attitudes.
Yeah. So,
belief.
science of Krishna is not based on belief. It's based on fact. Things that are irrefutable in all realms of existence, in the material world and the spiritual world, and at all times, in past, present, and future. So that is the actual meaning of science. And it has nothing to do with religion. Religion is a belief in something. Okay, so we're going to hear some things preliminary before we begin to discuss the 4 nutshell verses. Why? Because the most important point to understand is you cannot understand this subject if you are influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance, or rajas and tamas. It is impossible to understand. One has to come in the mode of goodness, or sattva guna, in a, let's say, a continuous way, not sometimes, but in a continuous way, to begin to understand. And you will not really understand until you attain transcendental goodness, no longer influenced by the three modes of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas. You have to come to suddhasattva, transcendental goodness, to actually understand. All right? So that's why very few people understand who Krishna is and how to serve Krishna, what are his unique qualities, etc. So that means the Hindus, that means the Christians, that means the Muslims, that means the Jews, the Sikhs, the Jains, the Buddhists. They have at most partial understanding, at most, but mostly very little understanding. The Buddhists don't even accept the existence of God and the soul. So they just practice mundane goodness. And there is some knowledge of God in the Bible, the Old Testament and New Testament. There is some knowledge of God in Islam, of course, and there's some knowledge of God in Judaism. But it is not scientific knowledge. It's just general feeling that there is a supreme being. And now, that's not bad. It's a good thing. But it is not complete knowledge. Okay. So now we're gonna hear what is the difference between partial knowledge and complete knowledge. There are symptoms that can tell us if a person has partial knowledge or complete knowledge of God. So first we'll read the first canto, second chapter, verse 19. Tadarajas tamo bhavo kamaloba dayaschaye cheta etarana vidam stitvam sattve prasidati. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, and it's very good to write down these references. We started with 1.1.1 Srimad Bhagavatam, and I said that first verse, first canto, first chapter, first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam explains, or is the basis of the 4 nutshell verses that we're going to study in the second canto, 9th chapter. The second chapter, and second canto, 9th chapter, starting with verse 33, is simply a more explanation of 1.1.1. So right from the beginning, and beginning with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then the verse Janmadasiyata Divyaditaratascha Vigya Swarat, etc. Okay, so now we're discussing the first canto, second chapter, 19th verse, which says, as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he or she becomes completely happy. So, we started with Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Then we discussed what is the definition of science, the real definition of science, as opposed to the very partial definition of science that's in either the Britannica or the Merriam-Webster dictionary. We also discussed very shortly what is the dictionary definition of religion, which is a type of faith. And science has nothing to do, the real definition of science has nothing to do with faith or belief. It's fact that's true in all realms of existence, whether in the material world or the spiritual world, and true at all times, past, present, and future, and eternal present in the spiritual world. Okay, so now, in this verse, it says, as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. So this is very clearly saying that as long as we're influenced by the modes of material nature, we will not understand very much. Now, if we're influenced by passion and ignorance, we'll never understand anything. If we're influenced by goodness, we only begin to understand on very elemental or very, let's say, beginning level. We have to actually come to transcendental goodness or Suddha Sattva to actually understand and as much as is possible by a human being. How much is possible to understand by a human being? Up to 78% of the qualities of Krishna we can understand. Lord Shiva can understand approximately 84%. Narayana can understand approximately 94%. But Krishna has certain qualities, four very, very unique qualities that is almost impossible to understand. But one can experience them if in that pure state of love for Krishna. Okay, so why is that? Why do we say there are some qualities that the Lord has that you'll never be able to understand? Because they're always expanding. Nothing is static in the spiritual world. It's always dynamic. And Krishna's, we are coexistent with Krishna as far as eternity goes. But when it comes to knowledge, there's Sat, there's Chit, and there's Ananda. So when it comes to knowledge, we can participate with Krishna in transcendental knowledge, but that is always expanding. And we can participate in Krishna's ecstasies, but it's always expanding. So we'll never be able to understand it completely because it's infinitely expanding, right? So we can never be completely equal with the Lord. We are equal as far as eternity goes because we have an eternal soul and Krishna has an eternal soul. Okay, so now in the purport to 1.2.19 Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, a living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. Now you have to understand what the word constitutional means. It means that just like there's a constitution of the United States, right? What does that word mean? It means how the government is functioning. What are its powers? What are its limitations, etc.? That's what the word constitution means when they say Constitution of the United States. Now, when it says constitutional position or normal constitutional position of the living being, that means who we are in relationship to Krishna and what are our qualities and what are the things that we can do and what are our limits. As far as the limitations are the most important point. The limitation is we will never be equal to or greater than Krishna. We will always be subordinate. So that is our constitutional position. That's the way we're made. That's the way we will act. That's the way we will always be limited. We will never be equal to or greater than the Lord. So that is our constitutional position. That's our nature. We cannot change it. That is an eternal state. So it says, as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. A living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. This state of existence is called Brahmabhuta or Atmananda. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochiti nakansati samak sarvesu edesu madbhaktim abhutin. So that's 18th chapter, 54th verse. Let's take a look at it. Madbhaktim labhate param. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. This 18th chapter, 54th verse. Write it down. It's a very important verse. This means that we become prasanatma. That means prasana atma. We become full of joy. Prasana is full of joy. Atma, our soul, is fully joyful. Our soul, our mind, we're fully joyful. Why? Because we have no longer sochati and kankshati. That is, no more lamentation. Oh, my 401k went down. Oh, you start worrying, right? But there's no more sochati. There's no more lamentation like that. And there's no more hankering. Oh, I want the stock market to go up again. No, there's no more lamentation, and there's no more hankering. Hankering means a desire you have that you're always thinking about, and you can't get it out of your mind, right? That's a hankering. It's stronger than a desire. It's a desire that it doesn't leave you alone, right? It just keeps coming back into your mind all the time. So when there's no more kankshati, no more sochati and kankshati, lamentation because you lost something, or hankering because you want something and you're not getting it, you're free of that. And then samak sarve subute, and you're equal toward all living entities. It's not that you like white people, you don't like black people, or you like black people, you don't like white people. Nothing like that. You're equal to everyone, right? Samak sarve subhutesu. So it says, one who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. Who is the Supreme Brahman? It's Krishna. We'll explain that. The word Brahman has different meanings, and sometimes it's confusing. We'll go over that in a minute. And it says, one who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He or she never laments or desires to have anything. Never laments or desires to have anything. This is called minimalist living. You cannot really be a devotee if you're extravagant. You can only be a pure devotee. We're talking about becoming a pure devotee. You can be a devotee and be extravagant, but you can't become a pure devotee and be extravagant. You have to be very minimalist. And what's the proof for that? Ishavaisham midam sarvam yajatkin jagatyam jagatina taktena bunjitaha magritaha kashasridhanam. First mantra of Ishopanishad. That is, that the Supreme Personality got it, is the owner of everything. He's Ishavaisha, the owner of everything. Your body, your mind, your senses, your house, your car, the universe, demigods, everything belongs to him. Nothing belongs to us, right? But he has set aside for every living entity. That means the elephants, the bugs, the snakes, the aquatics, the plants, the mammals, the birds, everybody, the devas, the human beings, he's set aside for everyone their minimum quota. By accepting your minimum, and anything above that you use in the service of God, you can be free from the laws of karma. Kurvan ebaha karmani jajiva jatam samha evam tvayi nanyatetosti na karma lipyate nare. That's Ishopanishad, first and second mantra. So we are supposed to live a minimalist life. That's why it says here, that's why you'll never lament or hanker, because God has prepared for you already your minimal needs. It's when we take more than our minimal needs that we get trapped by Maya. You have to think about this very seriously. Now, that doesn't mean you're not allowed to make $1 million a day. You can make $1 million a day. But you would have to use at least 99% of that in the service of Krishna. Because how much does it cost you to live one day? What do you think? How much does it cost you to live one day? Huh? That's all? Really? Huh? No, but you have your car, you have your insurance, you have taxes, you have this thing, you have that thing, right? No, it probably costs you about, I don't know, $350, $400 a day, probably, if you count all those things, right? But you're making $1 million, right? So how much of that do you need to maintain yourself? And the rest you should use in the service of Krishna. We don't say the rest you throw it away or you burn it. No, it should be used in the service of Krishna to spread Krishna consciousness. This is the way Yudhisthira Maharaj lived. This is the way Prahlad Maharaj lived. Prahlad Maharaj was king of the whole world, the whole universe. Yudhisthira was king of the whole earth planet, right? This is the way Lord Ramachandra lived. This is called minimalist lifestyle. You can make $1 million a day. We're not saying you can't do it. You're allowed to do it. But now, how are you going to use the money? If you do, 1 for Krishna, 2 for me. 2 for Krishna, 4 for me. 4 for Krishna, 8 for me. Then you remain a karmi, even though you chant Hare Krishna. You remain a karmi. You will not be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So you have to learn to live a minimalist life. Now, what that minimum is, if you're married, you and your wife have to agree what the minimum is. You can't arbitrarily say, well, the minimum is I'm only going to give you, $50 a day, that's it. No. You need more money than that to live, right? So you have to figure out what your minimum is, and then you stick to it. And sometimes it might have to increase, but then when the children are out, they're married, and they're no longer at the house, then it's going to really be decreased. See? But you still could be making $1 million a day. Okay. So then the samak sarvesu bhutesu, one is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So this is a very important verse, 1854, if you want to attain the state of pure devotional service to Krishna. Okay, so now we go back to 1.2.19. It says, a living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. This state of existence is called Brahmabhuta or Atmananda, or the state of self-satisfaction. So one time I had a friend of mine who's not a devotee, and it was a period when the stock market went down, so I asked him, I said, are you okay? He said, yeah. I said, do you have any stocks? He said, no. I said, okay, so everything's all right? He said, yeah, what do you mean everything's all right? I never bought any stocks. It can go up and down, it doesn't affect me. And I never buy anything without paying for it cash. And I don't have any debts. I paid off my car, I paid this thing, I paid that thing. And he said, the stock market can go bust, I don't care, it doesn't affect me. Now, he's not a devotee, right? He's a karmi, but he learned to live a minimalist life. See, so he's not affected by ups and downs, But I had an uncle, I could tell what the stock market did on any day by seeing my uncle. And if I went to my uncle, I said, Uncle, how are you? He said, don't bother me right now. I'm very busy. Right? That means the stock market went down. If I went to see my uncle, and he said, oh, hey, come here. My grandson said, I'm going to give you a ice cream. That means stock market went up. You see, I could tell. But see, what kind of life is that? One day up, next day down. That's not a life. That is nonsense, you see. So therefore, it says here, you have to be not only a minimalist, not only equal to all people, etc. No sochati kangsati, no lamentation, and no hankering, but you also have to be equally friendly to all living entities. It's very important. You don't say, this guy's my enemy, this guy's my friend, that person I don't like that much, but I'll tolerate them. No, you have to be equal to everyone. Okay, so, and that is called seeing everyone equally. What does it mean to see everyone equally? It means you don't see their body, you see that they have a soul. And Krishna is also present in their heart as Paramatma. So everybody, including the animals, the insects, the plants, the aquatics, the birds, the snakes, they all have a relationship with Krishna, and they have Krishna in their heart. So, therefore, every living entity is a walking, talking, or slithering, or sissing, or whatever, mandir. That's the vision. The devotee has the universal vision of all living entities, right? And therefore is equal to all. Okay, so now come back to this. It says, this self-satisfaction is not like the satisfaction of the inactive fool. The inactive fool is in a state of foolish ignorance, whereas the self-satisfied Atmanandi is transcendental to the material state of existence. This stage of perfection is attained as soon as one is fixed in irrevocable devotional service. So irrevocable means no vacation. No, I'm going to go to Yosemite Park and cool off a little bit. No. I'm going to go to Reno or Las Vegas and have some fun. Or I'm going to go to see Donald Duck and Dumbo in Los Angeles, Mickey Mouse Park or whatever. No, there's no vacation. This is it's irrevocable devotional service, fixed in irrevocable devotional service. Devotional service is not inactivity, but the unalloyed activity of the soul. Now, this word unalloyed is very important. It comes from a word alloy. So what is an alloy? An alloy is a mixture of metals to make some kind of thing, like steel is a mixture of metals. So when it says unalloyed, it means there's no mixture. It's pure Krishna consciousness. So, but unalloyed activity of the soul, which is pure Krishna consciousness. That's who we really are. We are the soul. We're not the body. We don't really have to do much for the body. It's only because we're in illusion that we eat a lot, sleep a lot, and pass a lot of stool and urine. The more you eat, the more you pass, you see. But if you look at pure devotees, like let's say Raghunath Das Goswami, or you look at also Haridas Thakur, they hardly ate anything. They hardly slept. Haridas Thakur only slept not even half an hour. And Raghunath Das, and sometimes Haridas Thakur didn't sleep at all. They both hardly ate anything, but yet they were very active and they didn't die. Raghunath Das, he would take every other day 1 teaspoon of ghee. That was it. He didn't die. So you don't really need to eat a lot. And you don't need to sleep a lot. But don't try and imitate them. I'm not saying, try and keep yourself awake because I said we don't need to sleep. But, Prabhupada says 6 hours is all you need. But the point is, it is possible to, once you become excited by Krishna consciousness, to diminish the eating and sleeping, and of course mating and defending, to a bare minimum. Like, for example, Napoleon, he hardly slept 2 or 3 hours a night. Why? He was so excited conquering countries. And Prabhupada talks about him. He said he would hardly sleep because he was so excited. But he was excited about nonsense, Now imagine what happens when you get excited about Krishna. And we have the proof. We have so many pure devotees, especially Haridas Thakur, Raghunath Das Goswami, and others. They hardly slept, they hardly ate. They were so excited, chanting and preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness. Okay, so it says, the soul's activity becomes adulterated, meaning contaminated, in contact with matter. And as such, the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. So you see advertisements for sleep beds. You know, you can adjust the temperature of the bed. You can adjust the temperature of the pillow. You can adjust the hardness or softness of the bed. And that bed costs a lot of money. You got one of those beds, Prabhu? No. I'm glad you don't have it. You see, all these things are for sense gratification. It has nothing to do with spiritual life. You see? And so when we become adulterated in contact with matter, in contact with cell phones and televisions and cars and this thing and that thing, then what happens? This state of existence is called, it says, as such, the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. The effect of devotional service becomes manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance. Complete elimination of what? Complete elimination of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness, and he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudeva, or the state of unmixed sattva or Suddha sattva. Only in this Suddha sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord. Now this is 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, 19th verse. And I'm sure you have read this before, but I don't think you understood it. You see, that's why it's important to come to class, because you can read all you want, you will not understand much. And you'll never really remember much. But when you come to class, and we have class every day, right? And early in the morning, why? Because there's no disturbance at that time. So when you hear genuine devotees speak this knowledge, or read it, or recite it, or whatever, it makes it is a major difference. You will remember something. But if you simply read, I mean, even if you pass tests, your Bhakti Shastri test, the Bhakti Vaibhava test, the Bhakti Vedanta test, you can pass all those tests and still not really understand a lot. You'll understand some things, but not a lot. Why? Because our disease is forgetfulness. Okay, so only in the Suddhasattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord. A devotee is always in the mode of unalloyed goodness. That means pure goodness. Therefore, he harms no one, but the non-devotee, however educated he may be, is always harmful. A devotee is neither foolish nor passionate. The harmful, foolish, and passionate cannot be devotees of the Lord, however they may advertise themselves as devotees by outward dress. A devotee is always qualified with all the good qualities of God. Qualitatively, such qualifications may be different, but quantitatively, such qualifications may be different, but qualitatively, both the Lord and his devotee are one and the same. All right? Now, these are preliminary things that we're going to read before we get into the 4 nutshell verses, because the 4 nutshell verses are extremely profound, but this is a preparation for going into that profound state of consciousness. Then verse number 1.2, Yoga Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana Mukta Sangasya Jayate. thus established in a mode of unalloyed goodness. Okay, so the previous verse brings us to unalloyed goodness. We're free now of rajas and tamas, and we're free also of sattva. Now we're in the state of suddha-sattva, right? So thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, or suddha-sattva, the man or woman whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Now, we explained already what's the real meaning of science. So we don't have to go over it. This is talking about positive scientific knowledge. Knowledge is what you know about Krishna. It's not what you know about JavaScript. It's not what you know about the stock market. It's what you know about Krishna. That's what knowledge is. There are 18 points of knowledge in the 13th chapter, 8th to 12th verse. Anything beside those 18 points is called ignorance. We don't go over it now, but you should take a look at the 13th chapter, 8th to 12th verse, 8th to 11th verse, to know what is actually knowledge. Knowledge has nothing to do with what kids are learning in school. That everything they're learning in school is considered ignorance, according to Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so it says here, it is also said that scientific knowledge of Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service, bhakti yoga. The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. So it says no ordinary person, or even one who has attained success in human life, like Bill Gates, like Elon Musk, like Joe Biden, like Trump, or like Putin. They have attained some level of success in human life, but they have no way of understanding this knowledge. So just because someone is rich or famous or powerful, that doesn't mean that they can understand knowledge of Krishna. Okay, so perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. That is the first thing we must learn. I am not this material body. I have nothing to do with matter. I have an eternal soul that's part and parcel of Krishna. Mamayavamsa, Jiva, Bhuta, Jivaluka, Sanatana. That's who I am. My soul is Sanatana. It's eternal. And that's who I really am. I'm not this body. And I have two bodies. I have a gross body made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And I have a subtle body made of mind, intelligence, and ego. When you die, your subtle body doesn't die. Your subtle of memories of things that you've done and desires that you've had in the past and the desires you have at the moment of death. So, therefore, your next body will be determined by what you did in the present body and what desires you have at the moment of death. So, just like there was this one man, a Mexican guy, he was drunk. He got run over by a bus, and he didn't die right away, but he was dying. So they called a priest to come, and a Catholic priest, because he was a Christian, so that the priest could do the final rites right before he dies. So he was saying all his prayers, blah, 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 blah. And he said, now, just say, Jesus, I love you. And the man said, tequila, and he died. Why? Because he was a drunkard. He was drinking tequila. The priest said, say the name of Jesus, say the name. He said, tequila, and he died. So what do you think happened to him? Right? And then there was this one man in Calcutta. His whole life, he bought Calcutta steel stock, and he became a crorepati. Very, very rich man. Right? So now, fast forward, he's on his deathbed. All the family is there. They've got, 4 sons and 2 daughters, and their husbands are there, and then their kids are there, then their grandkids are there. So they're a huge family. And Pitaji is dying, and everyone's, sobbing. And finally, Pitaji makes some motion. He says, I want to speak something. So they prop him up a little bit. It's a Friday night. And he says, Monday morning, by Calcutta Steel Stock. And he died. Now, what do you think happened to Pitaji? What do you think, Prabhu? What do you think happened to Pitaji? Huh? A rat, yeah. A rat in Calcutta Steel Factory in Calcutta. Because that's the last thing he said. So, be careful. This could happen to any of us. It depends what our desires are, and it depends on what we did during this life. So, if you've been doing things that distract your mind from Krishna, then you're going to see them, because at the last moment of life, in the last 1 minute to 30 seconds, your whole life flashes in front of you. Right? So, if most of your life was Krishna conscious, that's what you'll see. But if there's a lot of nonsense, that's what you'll see. So instead of saying Hare Krishna, you might say tequila, or you might say, Calcutta Steel Stock, or something like that. Right? So it's very important to spend the majority or all your time in Krishna consciousness. So here it says, no ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. The attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. A Brahmana is the symbol of sattva guna, or the mode of goodness, and others who are not in the mode of goodness are either Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, or less than the Sudras. The Brahminical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So one cannot be a devotee unless at least qualifies as a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. That is not the end of it. That is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava. In fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage, a pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage the conception of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. So this eliminates a lot of people, even though they're initiated, even though they're Brahmanas, even though they might be worshiping the deities. It doesn't mean that they are completely liberated. It doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to go back to Godhead, unless they actually develop scientific knowledge of Krishna. Now, we already explained what the word science means, right? Now, scientific knowledge of Krishna means you know the 64 qualities of the Lord. And of those 64 qualities, some are shared by human beings, some are shared by Lord Shiva, some are shared by Brahma, some are shared by Narayana, but there's 4 that are unique to Krishna. You have to know those. You have to know all 64, and especially the last 4. You have to know why Krishna has mutually contradictory qualities. There's a whole bunch of things you have to know about Krishna. And if you don't know it, you're just a good Brahmana, you're going to take birth again. You're not going to go back to Godhead. You'll take a good birth, right? You'd be up there doing the Bhangra with the Apsaris or something, but you're not going back to Godhead. Going back to Godhead is a special thing, and very few people are able to go back to Godhead. Very few. Why? Because you have to be trained in the science of Krishna. That's not an easy thing. You would have to come to class every day to do that. Because Krishna has infinite number of qualities, and many of them are mysterious. We're going to get to that in a minute. So the devotee is already a brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a brahmana has to become a Vaishnava, in fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a brahmana. In the material stage, even a brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage, the conception of Brahman, or transcendence, is realized. Scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead, Krishna. Vasudeva stage is completely transcendental to the influence of the modes of material nature. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. It's not enough to come to Sattvic stage. One must come to Suddha Sattva stage to be completely liberated. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead, Krishna. The science of the personality of Godhead is the subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual line. Foolish men, or men with a poor fund of knowledge, do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes, sattva, rajas, and tamas, even up to the stage of a brahmana. When a qualified brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava, in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. So this eliminates about 99% of the Hindus, almost 100% of everybody else. But it eliminates 99% of the Hindus, who are mostly, even if they're brahmanas, they're still not educated in the science of Krishna. You have to think about this. And I'm not exaggerating when I say 99% of the Hindus. Most of the Hindus are simply engaged in karma kanda activities, coming to God and asking for benedictions, for asirbat, so that my son can pass the SAT test, so that my grandmother's backache can get better, so that my business does better, so this, so that. They're all material things. They go to Balaji, they go to this one, they go to that one, they go to anybody to get, just like in World War II, this one Hindu in Calcutta, he became rich by selling raw materials to the Nazis. He put Hitler's picture on his altar. I'm not kidding you. He put Hitler's picture on his altar and started worshiping, doing arti to Hitler. You see, you can put anybody on your altar. And people do that. They put anybody. They put their grandmother. They put their neighbor on the altar. They put a dog on the altar. You know, if they can get some benefit, they'll put anybody on the altar, right? Or they'll come to the temple and they say, look, if you put so-and-so Baba on the altar, I'll give you $5 million. What do you think they do in that temple? Huh? They put the Baba on the temple. Doesn't matter, you know, he might be Baba Lula. Doesn't matter, you know. They got the $5 million, or the $1 million, or the $500,000, right? So all of a sudden you see, you know, all these different deities on the altar, right? Because people paid for it, and the deity might be an ordinary person sometimes. Right? Okay, so that is 1.2.19 and 20. Now we're getting closer now to the beginning. Second canto, 9th chapter, And verse number 31. Second canto, 9th chapter, verse number 31. In the previous verse, 30, in the next to the last paragraph, it says, factually, Lord Brahma does not create the living entities. In the beginning of the creation, he is empowered to give different bodily shapes to the living entities according to their work. During the last millennium, Brahmaji's duty is just to wake the living entities from their slumber and to engage them in their proper duty. The different grades of living entities are not created by Brahmaji by his capricious whims, but he is entrusted with the task of giving the living entities different grades of body so that they can work accordingly. And still he is conscious that he is only instrumental, so that he may not think of himself as the supreme powerful Lord. Devotees of the Lord are engaged in a specific duty offered by the Lord, and such duties are successfully carried out without hindrance because they are ordained by the Lord. The credit of success goes not to the doer, but to the Lord. But persons with a poor fund of knowledge take credit of success into their own accounts and give nothing to the credit of the Lord. That is the symptom of the non-devotee class of men. So, when you hear, when Obama was giving a class, or giving a speech, he always spoke about himself. I did this, I did that. I'm the one that did that. I did this, and I gave people a free cell phone, and I did this, and I did that. So this I, that means that they're non-devotee. They're taking credit for doing all these things. Even Brahma, he did not create any living beings. Krishna created the souls, right? They're all part and parcel of Krishna. They're not part and parcel of Brahma. He wakes them up after the pralaya and gives them a suitable body based on the last desires they had at the moment of death and their karma during their life. So one person, Hare Krishna, Shri Radha Nilamadava Ki Jai. So one person can get the body of an alligator because that's what he deserves, according to his karma and the last desires. Another guy gets like the Calcutta Steel guy gets to be a rat in Calcutta Steel. And another person might become a worm in a septic tank. Have you ever looked at what goes on in a septic tank? We used to have one here. We were not connected to there was no connection to the sewer. So we had a septic tank. One day I had to open it up because every once in a while you have to empty the septic tank. It doesn't function properly. And I saw millions of living entities there, like worms and things. And they were eating everything. They're living entities. Some people get bodies like that. The ones that eat stool every day, like hamburger, hot dog, all that stuff. They can end up being one of those worms in a septic tank. So they can eat stool all day long for their whole lifetime. And there were millions of them. And I was afraid when I looked, I said, wow, this tank is full of these living entities. And they're eating it up like it's like eating a pizza or something, It was amazing. And then they're all living entities like us. We can end up like that, right? So you have to be very careful. This human life is meant only for self-realization, to understand our relationship with Krishna, and especially understand the science of Krishna. If we don't understand the science of Krishna, but we might be a good devotee, a good brahmana, we won't go back to Godhead. You have to understand the science of Krishna, the unique qualities of the Lord, all his qualities, and especially the unique qualities. Okay, so now in text 31, it says, the personality of Godhead said, knowledge about me is described in the scriptures as very confidential, and it has to be realized in conjunction with devotional service. The necessary paraphernalia for that process is being explained by me. You may take it up carefully. So he's saying, look, if you're a bookworm and you want to just sit down and study books, and I read this book, I read that book, I got this degree, I got that degree, it's not going to work. You can do it, but it's not going to work. It has to be in conjunction with devotional service. And Krishna says, Bhakti Mam Abhijanante Yavanyas Chasmi Tatprata Tatumam Tatpratota Kyatva Vishteta Anantaram. I can only be understood by devotional service. There's no other way. So you have to be engaged in devotional service, and the one aspect of devotional service is regularly hearing every day Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by genuine devotees. That's part of what you promised at initiation. And there are many bona fide devotees in ISKCON, but you have to hear every day. If you say, well, I just come on a Sunday and listen to the class, but I don't take it seriously. I don't have to believe everything Harivilas says. He's a little bit of a fanatic. I'm simply repeating what Prabhupada says. In fact, most of the time I just read what Prabhupada says. Right? Why? Because that's what preaching is. You repeat what you have heard from your guru. That is real preaching. Right? It's not that you make things up. No, there's no speculation of that. You have to say exactly what has been said by the previous acharyas, and especially Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so here it says, Lord Brahma is the topmost devotee of the Lord within the universe, and therefore the personality of Godhead replied to his four principal inquiries in four important statements. These were Brahma's questions. So these four nutshell verses are going to be summarized in simple English. Right? Number one, what are the forms of the Lord both in matter and in transcendence? Number two, how are the different energies of the Lord working? Number three, how does the Lord play with his different energies? Number four, how may Brahma be instructed to discharge the duty entrusted to him? These are in simple language. These are the meaning of the four nutshell verses that we're going to study. Okay? In simple language. Right? Number one, what are the forms of the Lord both in matter and in transcendence? That's a big subject. In the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita begins to teach us how to recognize Krishna in the material world. Did you know that? Did you know that? The 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is all about how to see Krishna in the material world. Did you know that? Okay. You see? Did you know? How many times have you read Bhagavad Gita? Maybe 10 times, right? But you're still not sure what's in the 7th chapter. The 7th chapter is all about how to see Krishna in the material world. Rasoham apsukonte prabhasmi sasisuraya pranava sarvavedesu sabde ke purusham nisu. And I am the taste of water. And I am the fragrance of a flower. And I am the light of the sun and moon. And I am ability in man. And so forth. And I am the syllable Om. So that's what that one verse said. There are a whole bunch of verses that say, I am this, I am that. This is how to see Krishna in the material world. It's important. Once you learn how to see Krishna in the material world, then you become more and more Krishna conscious. You see some car come by like that. You say, wow, wait a minute. The energy of that car, that's coming from Krishna. It's petrol. That's coming from Krishna, right? And you see, airplane flying through the air. But the petrol is making that airplane go also, right? Or you see a Tesla come by. Oh, but that electricity, that's coming from Krishna. They make the electricity either using oil or they have these dams, and they collect the water in the dam, and then they put it through these turbines, and the turbines turn and create electricity. It's all coming from water. What are Krishna's five material elements? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? So everything's coming from Krishna. That's why the airplane is flying through the air. That's why the car is zzz, like this, going this way, that way. That's why, the bear grabs someone and tears them apart. That energy is coming from Krishna. We ourselves are energies of Krishna. We are an energy of Krishna. See? So when you put 10,000 human beings, how do you think the Egyptians built the pyramids? Pyramids, they made these gigantic stones that weighed hundreds of thousands of pounds. How did they move? First of all, they had to chisel them, and they had to chisel them exactly right. And then they had to move them. Who moved them? There were human beings, sometimes up to 10,000 human beings, because every human being has some energy, right? Just like when we put the propane pizza oven in the truck, you need at least 4 people to do it. See? So we don't have a machine to put it up, right? We don't have a lift. But we are energies. We are energies of Krishna. See? Everything is the energy of Krishna. Krishna is the source of all energies. Right? So it says here that 1, what are the forms of the Lord both in matter and in transcendence? 2, how are the forms of the Lord both in matter? How are the different energies of the Lord working? 3, how does the Lord play with his different energies? 4, how may Brahma be instructed to discharge the duty entrusted to him? The prelude to the answers is this verse under discussion, wherein the Lord informs Brahma that knowledge of him, the supreme absolute truth, as it is stated in the revealed scriptures, is very subtle and cannot be understood unless one is self-realized by the grace of the Lord. Okay, you become self-realized not because you study books. You become self-realized not because even that you're doing devotional service. You become self-realized by the grace of the Lord. He has to choose you. Now, how do you get chosen by the Lord? Obviously, by pleasing the devotees, which gives pleasure to the Lord. When you please, like Prabhupada, then the Lord is very pleased. Okay? You may try to please the Lord directly, but it's more effective when you please the devotees of the Lord, especially the pure devotees. It's much more effective. Like, if you please Radharani, that's the most effective. Then Krishna has to accept you. If Radharani says, please, he's such a good devotee, you give him your blessing. Right? So when you please Srimati Radharani, or you please genuine devotees, and Krishna is very pleased. Because he is more pleased when he sees his devotees glorified. Okay, so the Lord says that Brahma may take the answers as he explains them. This means that transcendental knowledge of the absolute supreme being can be known if it is made known by the Lord himself. Okay. Tesam satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayanti te. This is Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter and 10th verse. Very important verse. It says that those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. That's what this is saying here. That to understand Krishna, it has to come from Krishna. You don't get it simply by reading books. Krishna has to choose you because you've satisfied him by serving his pure devotees very nicely, then he gives you the knowledge by which you come to him. Right? And then the next verse says, Tesam ivanakam paratam aham agyanamam tama nasyami apabhavasto jnanadipena basvato. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. This is what Krishna does when he's pleased with you. Right? And the purport says, when Lord Chaitanya was in Benares promulgating the chanting or making the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra accessible to people, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thousands of people were following him. Prakasananda Saraswati, a very influential and learned scholar in Benares at that time, derided, meaning he said negative things about Lord Chaitanya for being a sentimentalist. Sometimes philosophers criticize the devotees because they think that most of the devotees are in the darkness of ignorance and are philosophically naive sentimentalists. Actually, that is not the fact. There are very, very learned scholars who have put forward the philosophy of devotion. But even if a devotee does not take advantage of their literatures, meaning Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Nectar of Devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita, or of his spiritual master, if he or she is sincere in his devotional service, he is helped by Krishna himself within his heart. So the sincere devotee engaged in Krishna consciousness cannot be without knowledge. The only qualification is that one carry out the devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. The modern philosophers think that without discriminating, one cannot have pure knowledge. For them, this answer is given by the Supreme Lord. Those who are engaged in pure devotional service, even though they be without sufficient education and even without sufficient knowledge of the Vedic principles, are still helped by the Supreme God, as stated in this verse. Wow. Krishna is going to help you if you're a sincere sevak, engaging in service. The whole purpose of Vedic knowledge is to convince us to be engaged full-time in devotional service. That's the whole purpose. If you're engaged full-time in devotional service, you have understood all the Shastras. But it has to be pure devotional service, no material desire, simply a desire to please the Lord with love and devotion. Okay, so yeah.
Hare Krishna. Can you go to the translation of this verse? And if 10, this is
10:11.
Yeah. So to show them special mercy, I dwelling in their heart, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So this is talking about the devotees which is connected in the past verse, right?
In the what?
In the previous verse.
Yeah.
So then my question is that what is the ignorance? Because those are pure devotees. They are, if we read the previous verse.
Well, let's see what it says in the previous verse. It says that those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love.
Right.
It's not constantly devoted serving me with some love and some material desires. It's pure love, right? I give the understanding. So there's two qualifications. They're constantly engaged in devotional service and with love. Okay.
So then the next verse comes, because I assume that this is continuation.
Okay.
So then these devotees who are constantly devoted to serving the Lord.
Now your question is going to be, how come in the purport he says
No.
even if they're not educated, even if they don't follow their guru completely, still Krishna will help them from within? Is that your question?
No.
Okay.
So my question is, if you read these two translations together, because those Krishna is speaking to Arjuna.
Yeah.
So in first one it's a pure, like 10:10, it's pure devotee.
Yeah.
So then my question is, in 10:11, if a devotee is pure devotee, I mean,
Yeah.
person is a pure devotee, then what kind of ignorance Krishna is talking about here?
Well, that means that if there is any ignorance, he will eliminate it.
Anything left?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because just like, we have examples in ISKCON. Someone is considered a pure devotee. They're sannyasi. They could be, very prominent devotee, giving lectures all the time. Oh, and so you hear, what? Maharaj fell down? I mean, it's bewildering, right? Well, because they were not able to purify their heart completely. Right? So, some big devotees have fallen down. It's very bewildering. How is this possible? They gave such nice lectures. They did so much service, and they fell down. So, yeah, Krishna will purify the darkness born of ignorance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're almost finished for tonight. So it says, only by devotional service is the supreme truth, Krishna, pleased, and by his inconceivable energy, he can reveal himself to the heart of the pure devotee. The pure devotee always has Krishna within his heart, and with the presence of Krishna, who is just like the sun, the darkness of ignorance is at once dissipated. This is the special mercy rendered to the pure devotee by Krishna. Due to the contamination of material associations through many, many millions of births, one's heart is always covered with the dust of materialism. But when one engages in devotional service and constantly chants Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, the dust quickly clears and one is elevated to the platform of pure knowledge. This is answering your question. Right? The ultimate goal, Vishnu, can be attained only by this chant and by devotional service, and not by mental speculation or argument. Like, for example, you look at the Ritvik movement. It's all based on argument and logic. Right? But that's not the way to understand Prabhupada and Krishna, through argument and logic. It's through devotional service, without any material motive. That's the way to please Prabhupada and Krishna, and that's the way you'll eventually understand, or we will eventually understand Prabhupada and Krishna. You see, you're not going to understand by argument and logic. You'll get suffocated by argument. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Nobody agrees. See? But if everyone comes together and chants and engages in devotional service, then they'll all understand. That's the solution to all the problems of life. Right? The pure devotee does not have to worry about material necessities of life. He need not be anxious, because when he removes the darkness from his heart, everything is provided automatically by the Supreme Lord, who is pleased by the loving devotional service of the devotee. Now, I experienced this, and many devotees who joined the movement early on, they experienced this. We had nothing. We started with nothing, because whatever we had to give it to the temple, and we had to just follow, go out on Sankirtan every day and preach. And we had nothing, right? If I explain what I went through to open the first temple, your hair stand on end. It's frightening, right? But we succeeded. And now look at all these temples in the world, started by devotees who started with nothing. Prabhupada started with nothing, right? And what is he saying here? He says, the pure devotee does not have to worry about the material necessities of life. He need not be anxious, because when he removes the darkness from his heart, everything is provided automatically by the Supreme Lord, who is pleased by the loving devotional service of the devotee. This is the essence of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. By studying Bhagavad Gita, one can become a soul completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord and engage himself in pure devotional service. As the Lord takes charge, one becomes completely free from all kinds of materialistic endeavors. This is what happened. This is why the movement grew like a tsunami in those years, especially from 1969 to the disappearance of Prabhupada. The movement was expanding like anything, because you had all these people who were not worried about material things. They were just concerned on how to please Prabhupada. He wants to distribute these books. He wants his translations be printed and distributed. He wants to open these temples, and he wants to have these Rath Yatra festivals. He wants this, and the devotees did it. They didn't care about money. They did it, and they all, many of them became very successful. So what did Prabhupada do? He said, okay, you go to New Mexico and you open a temple. That's what a devotee did. Went to New Mexico, opened a temple. He started with nothing. He hardly had the money to get to New Mexico. Say, would you do this today? If I told you, okay, go open a temple in Alaska. But that's what Prabhupada was doing. He said, he told Shyam Sundar and Yamuna and Guru Das and Mukunda, said, you guys go to London, open a temple. They went with nothing. They went with nothing to London. They hardly had any money. And they had fabulous success. They were able to convince George Harrison, or Harry's son. That's Harrison means Hari's son, right? To become a devotee. And he supported it was a miracle how they did it. I mean, that story is there in Prabhupada's pastimes. So think about this. That's the last point we'll discuss now, and we'll continue tomorrow, is it? Yeah. So this is the introduction to the 4 nutshell verses. Hari Bol. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I have a question regarding what Prabhupada mentioned in the purport to 2.9.31.
Yeah.
So in the first sentence of the purport, Prabhupada says, Lord Brahma is the topmost devotee of the Lord within the universe.
Yes. The position of Brahma is, whether it's this universe or all the other universes, and there are many, right?
Yeah.
Is the most prominent devotee in that particular universe. But it still has a desire to dominate.
Mm. So my question is, so we were all Lord Brahma when we fell down from the spiritual world. The first
and
birth.
Look what happened to us.
Yeah. So the first birth we all got was Lord Brahma.
Yeah, look what happened to us.
And we degraded so much. So what is the hope for us? For me, for an insignificant soul like me, what is the hope to progress and go back?
No, the hope is you understand all the mistakes you made and you don't make them anymore. And you go back to become Brahma, and then you go back to Godhead. Right? You have to understand what your mistakes were and not to make them again. You simply have to follow 4 regulative principles. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, chant minimum 16 good rounds every day, come to class every day. Prabhupada wanted class 3 times a day. You read his letters. He wanted devotees to have class 3 times a day. We hardly have it once a day, right? But at least once a day you come, hear the class, and eat only prasadam, and do seva, and especially go out on Sankirtan. You do those things, you won't be making any mistakes anymore. But you can't say, well, today I'll come, tomorrow I'm going to sleep in, And yeah, I want to go on a vacation also. And I want to do this, and I want to do that, So that means you're making the same mistakes that you made previously, even when you were Lord Brahma. So if you simply follow this simple process, 4 things you should never do, 4 things you should do every day, you will be liberated in this lifetime. But if you keep deviating, like, well, today, I'm going to sleep in, or today I'm not going to do this, then you're making the same mistake that you made before. So you have to think about it. What's the meaning of initiation? You make a promise, and it's an inviolable promise. You can't break it. Every day I will do these. I will not do these 4 things, and I will do these other 4 things every day. And so that's a promise that you make. What's the meaning of initiation if you don't follow the promise? It means nothing, other than your guru will suffer, because the guru suffers when the disciple does not follow the rules and regulations. Yeah, any other questions?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Maharaj,
So you're not the only one that suffers. If you don't follow the rules and regulations, your guru suffers also. You have to take that into account also. Yeah, go ahead.
so the verse just now we read about 10.11 purport.
Yeah.
So Prabhupada is writing that basically you don't understand anything by mental or
By mental speculation or argument.
or arguments. Okay. So does that include the questions?
Argument is using it in a technical point. Like when 2 people have a debate, it's called argument. It's not like I hate you argument, right? They're arguing with each other based on philosophical principles, right? Go ahead.
So the literal lining here is like it is not possible to understand him or to achieve him simply by making a mental effort. So
Simply by what?
mental efforts.
Yeah, mental efforts. Yeah.
So does that mean that like argument or the genuine
No,
questions?
mental efforts means you're not engaging in devotional service. You're just engaging in debates
Okay.
with other
Yeah.
people.
So that genuine questions or doesn't fall into this category.
No,
Okay.
no. It's when you're arguing with someone
Yeah.
instead of engaging in devotional service and chanting and doing Harinam. Yeah. Okay, it's 9 o'clock, and in let's see, in 3 and 4 and 7 hours, we should wake up and take a shower and come to Mangalarti. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.